Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Alaska Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb Martin, and today's episode is brought to you by GS Holsters based out of Palmer, Alaska. Alaskan made and Alaskan tested. If you're looking to carry a firearm in the backcountry for protection, GS Holsters is the way you should be carrying it. They make an awesome Kydex chest holster that's about half the price of the leading competition. They're American made, they're tough, they're durable, they have great retention to lock your firearm into place, so if you're mountain biking, pack rafting, hiking, or climbing, or whatever have you, when you're in the outdoors, you always have your protection close at hand. Highly recommend them. You can get yours today at explorealaska.org, and we'll get it in the mail for you tomorrow. Today we have a very special guest for you. He has lived in Alaska since 1988, has hunted and explored all over Alaska and the world, and now helps run the largest hunting-based nonprofit in the state of Alaska. Please welcome to the show, Lewis Cusack. Lewis, welcome aboard, and good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, man. How's it going?
Oh, excellent. Getting off nights. A little tired. 12-hour shifts on the slope, that'll do it to you. But you did plenty of years up here, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do know the drill. Fortunately, most of my stuff was day shift, not night shift, and the only time I ever done nights was when we were on a response, and that was never a good time. So, but most of the time I spent on days, or the only time I got out of bed at night was call out or emergency response. So I was pretty lucky in that perspective.
Oh yeah, that's never a good time to be pulling OT is during something like that.
Yeah. So when the phone rings at night, in the middle of the night at that place, it's never going to be a good call.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, luckily we have quite a few members of our team that's on the fire team, and none of them have been called out here in a while. So that's definitely a positive. But it's Monday, the 24th of February, which means that draw tags just came out on, on Friday. They finally came out. I think they came out at 9 o'clock. I think half of Alaska was hitting the refresh button since midnight.
Yeah.
So how did it turn out for you? I know there was a lot of grumblings from people on the page. Some people turned out, drew their tags of a lifetime and are super happy. Some of them are not too thrilled about it. So how did it turn out for you and Ruth?
We had a new area we put in for caribou, and we both drew a caribou tag. The odds were better on that draw, and we ended up drawing it. A lot of guys put in for those super low drawing areas, which is what we usually do. And, we didn't draw any of those, but we did manage to pull a caribou tag out of it. For us, usually, the draw actually changes our hunting plans. It doesn't make them for us. We've always got, trips that we're going to do depending on what the drawing results are. And, if we draw well, then we make the changes we need to make. If we don't, we've already got plans in place. So we're pretty well locked in on what we're going to do this year. So life's still good, even though we didn't draw that coveted brown bear tag or sheep tag.
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people might bet or weigh a little heavy on hoping to get those tags. I think everybody kind of waits to hear what tags they drew to know what was happening. But some of the people that are passionate about and are kind of a little bit more dialed in will already have plans rocking and ready to go. Already have transporters. So. Once those tags come out, they're generally not the ones that are reaching for the phone to call, the plane service to book a flight, because they might already have a flight booked and their plans might just alter slightly, like you said.
Yeah, no, we're pretty well dialed in on what we're going to do, and, we'll do our moose hunt, and, we'll do either blacktail deer or mountain goat hunt, and the only difference there is where the plane lands, right?
Right, exactly.
I retired in 2017, and kind of a little bit of side activity to get into some different areas to hunt and make a little money on the side. I started guiding, and I'll do spring brown bear down on the peninsula, some guiding there, and then I'll guide for moose hunt for probably 10 days before Ruth and I take off on our own moose hunt. So.
Excellent. Yeah, this year I got some guiding to do down on Kodiak here coming up in April and May. Just guiding two groups of two people actually, which will be a first for me. I guided a two hunters last year, two partners, that came up together and have been saving for a while to come up and take a couple black bears. And this season, I'm actually taking one of the hunters from last year, taking his buddy and that hunter's son. So, excited to see those father and son teams in the outdoors, and to be a father and watch your son, come to a place like Alaska for the first time and take a brown bear. I'm excited to see that happen and excited to guide them to that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not enough, parents taking the kids out, and there's just not enough kids that have the interest in hunting today. And probably the biggest risk that we have, you can talk about cold winters, you can talk about anything you want to talk about, but the biggest risk we really have to conservation is the loss of funds from hunting and hunters. Last year was the first year on record where the state of Alaska actually took a hit on hunting licenses. And I think overall the state was down around 2,000 hunting licenses last year, and that's a huge concern for the state of Alaska and for many states actually, because people just aren't getting out and hunting as much as they used to, and with the loss of those revenues and the loss of participation comes the loss of funds and impact to conservation.
Yeah, definitely. For us that are pretty familiar with the system and kind of know how those funds work and everything, we kind of get it. But there's probably a lot of people that are listening, and some from the non-hunting crowd that probably don't quite understand, I would imagine, what we're talking about there. Would you mind kind of going in depth? Because I know you work with SCI and help run that organization, and it works really hard at bringing hunters and protecting hunters and bringing funds into game management. So if we're dropping hunting licenses and not having as many hunters, how is that negatively affecting game conservation in Alaska?
Well, in a lot of ways, I mean, from not only from the money gathered from hunting licenses, but from the from the money from firearms and ammunition. Every bit of that has a tax on it that ends up going back into a trust fund. To raise money for conservation and help support wildlife enforcement and wildlife activities. And like even with SCI, there's the Robinson Pittman. I always mispronounce it, but there's a Robinson Pittman Trust Fund, and every dollar that we put in to conservation gets matched by $3 from the trust fund. So, for example, we gave $12,500 to the Wildlife Harvest Initiative that the state of Alaska has started to try and impact, the end result by getting more people involved that, gather and fish and eat wild food. It's a big thing that a lot of people are seeing some success with. And we donated $12,500 to that initiative this year. And the net end result of that is a $50,000 donation because it's matched by the trust fund threefold. So that $12,500 from us turns into $50,000 towards the Department of Fish and Game.
Yeah, that definitely adds can provide some vital funding for some very important projects. And I've been doing some reading up on SCI the last couple of years. We talked about this the other day, how a lot of people can kind of misunderstand of what SCI is and what they're all about. But after reading about some of their conservation projects and looking at what I've seen firsthand, it's really made me realize what SCI really is. And maybe you could touch a bit about what SCI is all about and some of the major conservation projects that they've worked on in Alaska.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've done. It's been a passion for me is to try to dispel that myth that SCI is a bunch of rich old guys going to Africa. When SCI is the largest nonprofit contributor in the state of Alaska to wildlife conservation, and the biggest fighter of the for hunters' rights in the state. And we there's so many things we do. It take a while to list them all, but like a couple of the big projects that we're working on is like we were the largest nonprofit corporation in the state and the only nonprofit corporation in the state to contribute to the wood bison reintroduction project. And this year, we're already kicking off the second phase of that project, and we're looking to reintroduce some more wood bison into the same area. And I think if you look at the 2019 survey, that reintroduction is going really strong, and it counted 20 new calves in that area, with a total count of like 113 bison. Well, if we can get the same numbers in there again in the next couple of years, pretty quickly we'll have a harvestable surplus of wood bison in the state of Alaska. And, we're pretty excited about that. You're looking, I think the harvestable limit is 400 to 500 bison, and, with 100 bison in the field and 20 newborn calves this year, if we could just double that, you can just imagine how quickly, we'd have a new drawing tag in the state of Alaska.
So a lot of people might not be super familiar with that project. So just a little background from what I know, and if I misquote, please feel free to correct me on this. But from what I understand, is wood bison were hunted out of Alaska essentially at in the early 1900s, and then somebody was flying over in a plane in Canada and happened upon a herd of bison and noticed that they were different, that they weren't the plains bison that they assumed they were. And then after some research, I'm guessing by National Park or Fish and Wildlife Services over in Canada, they figured out they were wood bison. And they were, some of them through a coalition of different conservation organizations, brought some to the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center in Portage to help grow a herd to reintroduce wood bison to Alaska for the first time in over a century. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then just to give you an idea of the time frame, the planning actually, the initial planning took place between 1990 and 1993.
Wow.
And the bison were introduced in 2015. And the first calf was born in 2016.
Wow.
And I wasn't, part of this from the get-go, but you can imagine the commitment and the wherewithal it took to spend, 15 plus years to make literally a dream become a reality, to reintroduce wood bison. If you look around the state, there's so many great conservation efforts that have taken place in the state that you and I take advantage of, right? Mm-hmm. Mountain goats on Kodiak Island, Sitka black-tailed deer on Kodiak Island, plains bison in, 3 or 4 different spots, biggest one being Delta in the state. All of those were conservation projects just like the wood bison, and it really doesn't take a huge imagination to realize that a project like this could have a lot of meaning. Both of you probably, be able to hunt them, and, maybe I'll even be able to hunt them, but, for sure, your kids and my kids and their kids will more than likely have a great opportunity to hunt wood bison, And, it's pretty cool to be part of an effort like that, because if you look back across the conservation map, and of course Teddy Roosevelt, the man, his name always comes up, but you're standing in the back of a line of some very influential people that done a whole lot of good for this country and a whole lot of good for us Alaskans, and it's pretty cool to be a part of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to describe the magnitude of that project really for even for me when I first read about it. It was just kind of mind-blowing to think about how much coordination it took and what a group effort it took to get those bison not only into the field but get them from Canada and years to grow a herd at the Wildlife Conservation Center. Just the amount of work it took to take care of those animals and grow them and grow that herd over years and years and years to get them to a point where now, between SCI and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game and the Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center and all these groups came together to move these animals, and we're talking about animals that are a few thousand pounds, move them from Portage, Alaska into, you're crossing hundreds of miles to get them to their natural place where they haven't been in over a century. I mean, that we're literally, it's historic. You're changing history, changing that part of Alaska for decades to come for our children and their children's children. It's really impressive and huge.
Yeah, and it's the reality is it's fun to be part of it. They had the initial kickoff meeting here in earlier February, and I would have been there and been at the kickoff meeting and had more information, but it was unfortunately they scheduled it for the same time as our convention in Reno, and I had to be there in order to pull off this banquet and make sure we had what we needed to raise the funds in order to support projects like this. You know, a lot of people think the work stops after the banquet, and there's two pieces to this. I mean, first you raise the money, and then you got to make sure that you to use the money wisely, and that takes just as much, if not more, effort than it does to raise the money. And I mean, the way I see it, there's a commitment there, right?
Oh,
You know, you
definitely.
you either if people are going to donate money to you, if they're going to give you funds, and they expect you to use that money wisely, and they expect you to use it for a good cause, and that's a bit of responsibility, and it's also a commitment to make sure that you do justice to what these people have given their money up for.
Oh, definitely. And since we're kind of on the topic of how you raise fund in your banquets, I think it'd be a good time to maybe talk about what you guys do have coming up. It's kind of short notice for a lot of the visitors, but coming up this next weekend, your guys' Alaska banquet's coming up. Can you give us
Yeah,
a little bit of details on that?
yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. Actually, if you look at our banquet page on aksafariclub.org, you'll find a lot of information about it. But our banquet's it's a 2-day banquet, and it's February 28th and 29th. The 28th is virtually sold out. I think there might be a seat or two there that on tables that aren't quite full, but for the most part, it's oversold out, and it's our heroes night. And what we try to do that night is, we try to honor, all first responders, military, police officers, firemen. If you drive an ambulance, you're getting out in harm's way in the middle of the night, on an icy road trying to help somebody, get home safely or get to the hospital so they can get fixed. We honor all that, and there's no, that, we don't check people's licenses, nothing. If they come to the door and they've got a ticket and they say they're a police officer or a military guy, we give them a ticket and we do a drawing for 10 different guns, and we try to do something special for the military that night too, with the honor guard and a lot of recognition. And we also, it's a little bit less expensive that night, and we try to provide items that, would really fit that demographic. And I put a pretty good effort into our banquet this year to try to have something very unique and very different. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to have anybody that walked in our room have the opportunity to win or something significant, whether it was a gear package or a trip or a tag of a lifetime. And this year a guy can come to our banquet with $140, and put in for the first ever issued Kodiak Island brown bear tag that lets you select any area on Kodiak, Fognak, or Raspberry Island, either the fall of 2020 or the spring of 2021 to hunt, and except for the Sturgeon River, and usually that stuff would be auctioned on live auction and would go to the deepest pockets, right? Well, this year we're raffling it, and as a means to bring in new blood into our organization when we're selling the banquet tickets, the raffle tickets at the banquet. So the drawing odds are really good on that tag, and it's $50 a tag, 5 for 200. And then we've got a New Mexico private ranch elk hunt, and it's an all wild elk hunt. It's not private ranch high fence. It's just private land. You've got access to it with a fully guided trip, land on the tag included, which if you know much about New Mexico, drawing a tag is pretty tough. It's a $12,000 hunt, and $50 you can buy a tag for that. And then, we've got a gear package that's worth almost $14,000, and it's a gear package. It's all gear, guns, and optics. I mean, there's no clothing in there. There's no taxidermy work in there. It's all good, high-end, high-quality gear. I selected it myself, and it's all stuff that I'd either want in my gun safe or want in my backpack or want in my plane when I flew in the field, and it's $20 a ticket for it. And then we've got a blacktail deer hunt that's only Friday night, and it's all included round trip from Anchorage to Fognak, 5-day, 4-night blacktail deer, fully guided blacktail deer and sea duck hunt, and it includes a rifle and a backpack, $20, so $140, and you could have 4 really significant items, that you could potentially win. And then also, on the whole other end of this spectrum, we've got a big live auction that, we've got 75 items between the 2 nights, and I've got everything from a 2-day fly-out fishing trip at Lake Creek to a leopard hunt in Namibia and everything in between. So it should be a pretty exciting night. And Saturday night's our bigger night where, we kind of get, most of our members come Saturday night. A lot of them come to both nights. But Saturday night, it's a little more expensive. The meal's a little fancier, and we have a lot of big ticket items that we draw for that night. And then this year we're doing something totally different. We're closing it out with a big live band after party, and the band's named Nothing But Trouble. So it should be a fun night. We're pretty excited to see how well the changes are, and how people react to them.
Oh yeah, it sounds like it's going to be epic. I'm incredibly jealous. This is the second year I haven't been able to go being here on the North Slope. But just since you mentioned it, you really wanted to push or trying to get new blood in your organization or bring in new hunters, and that's a lot what we focus on is people who are new to the outdoors and people who wanted to get into hunting and just don't really know where to start. So we try to push a lot of content towards them and teaching them new things, but talking to a new hunter on why they should join SCI or people that are interested in the outdoors, what does becoming a member, how does that help them, and how would that help them in their hunting in Alaska?
Well, for one thing, you'd be joining a huge organization of like-minded individuals that are all working for the same cause, right? And it's ensure we've got access to hunting rights, ensure we've got access to public land, and ensure we've got conservation efforts in place that, make sure that, when you get to be my age, there's still hunting opportunities for you. And, it takes money to do that, and it takes commitment. And, at some point in time, you've got to get involved in some way if you realistically want to look to the future and say, yep, I'm going to have an opportunity when I get there, or look behind you to your kids growing up and make sure that they have an opportunity, and that's what I say. That's what I see in a nutshell. We do a ton of stuff to, another big thing that we're a part of is, I know just about everybody's heard of John Sturgeon, right?
Right.
And John Sturgeon, he's on a lot of boards, but he's on our board, and he had to fight with the hovercraft, and a lot of people say, oh yeah, it's the guy with the hovercraft, right? What they don't realize is that opened up a door and opened up a window for every one of us to use our waterways and to use our water system to access public land. Whether the feds can have the park closed down all they want to, they can't stop you from running on that river to get to your hunting area. And that's literally what they did to John, right? And that's what they could do to all of us if John hadn't have fought that fight all the way to the Supreme Court twice and won. I mean, it's a historical case. He's the only guy that's ever taken two cases to the Supreme Court and won two back-to-back unanimous decisions both times.
Oh yeah, that was a huge win for not only hunters. That's the thing. A lot of people hear about this stuff, and it kind of with politics these days, it kind of gets an us versus them mentality. They hear hunting, and because they're a non-hunter, they might think, oh well, I should oppose this because I'm against hunting. But if you dive into really what that case was about, I know we're familiar with it, but a lot of our listeners might not be super familiar with the John Sturgeon case. Again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong or misspeak here, but basically he was hunting in Alaska on a hovercraft in a waterway, and the feds basically busted him, said he couldn't travel on that waterway because it was inside parkland, and they I'm assuming he's sued them after they tried to punish him for doing that. Is that correct?
Yeah, they literally stopped him from going to his moose hunting area, and he was he wasn't hunting on federal public land. He was passing through federal public land, and they stopped him, and that's what started the fight. And I mean, every one of us has got used that property, right? It's particularly because he was hunting. But I mean, if they shut down the waterway, they could shut down the waterway if you're doing a river float and camping, if you're doing a fishing trip, or if you're just simply doing an echo trip through that piece of property. I mean, they could literally shut you down, and by making that landmark decision, now they can no longer tell you, hey, you can't use that river to get to where you want to be because it flows through our park. And I actually have personal experience with it because I hunt up in Unit 23, right? And Unit 23, the feds were shutting down a whole bunch of hunting and a whole bunch of access to what is as was called non-local, non-qualified subsistence users, right? So, the feds have a whole different set of hunting regulations for what's on federal public land that's called the local subsistence user, and they have a higher level of rights to hunt that property, but they were literally excluding everybody, even though the wildlife composition study said that there was a harvestable surplus that would support hunting for all the demographics, not only the local citizens, but non-local Alaskan residents and non-residents, and they were shutting it down for everybody that wasn't a local. They still actually have it shut down for non-residents, even though the composition data says that it supports that harvest. And but once that decision was made, I guarantee you the rules started changing significantly and right away. And I was in all those discussions, and it was very interesting to see the immediate change and demeanor from the Federal Park Service, because particularly like in Unit 23, right? When you look at high water mark is where the water's at in May and June during breakup, right? During September, in some of those places, you have a mile of hunting real estate that's literally, in what's defined as that navigable waterway. And nothing against the locals. I mean, everybody hunts and everybody harvests, right? But their primary hunting and harvesting area is the riverbed itself. Well, once you open up that river to public access, then all of a sudden, if you don't open up federal public land for those of us who typically land on lakes fall off the river, now all of a sudden you really have a problem with people hunting in the same area and conflict of interest between, the locals and the non-locals, because, by law we have the right to be there.
Yeah, federal land really belongs to everybody, and I think in this day and age we see, and we're beginning to see a lot more conflicts on a national level between
Yes.
user groups, and I think a lot of that um, comes from a little bit of about misunderstanding. I think uh, like Chugach State Park's a prime example. The last couple of years, even though it's not a national park, but just
Yeah.
using it as an example as a state park, the Clutna management area, there's a lot of users that use that area on the weekends and in the summertime, and they start having massive amounts of bear problems in that between that area and Eagle River. And so
Hmm.
Fish and Game started looking at opening up more bear hunting opportunities, and they started feeling, a lot of the non-hunters immediately thought, okay, there's going to be people running around wounding animals, there's going to be bear conflicts, there's going to be, when you get that many people in different user groups in such a small area and accessing the same waterways, same trailheads, obviously that situation you're talking about is more remote than what I'm referring to, but it's just kind of an example of, when people don't understand and they don't hunt and they look at, opening up hunting to areas and opening up access to areas to specifically hunt, it's kind of a negative um, vibe that a lot of them can get if they don't hunt themselves, because I think it comes from not understanding really how you can hunt the surplus of a species and actually help that species out, and how hunting can actually be part of conservation and be a major role in conservation,
Yeah.
globally speaking.
And some people, it really doesn't matter what you say or what kind of information you give them. You'll never convince them that hunting is conservation. And to me, I always say it, very simply. I mean, if there's a lot of ranchers that raise beef cattle, right? And they sell it to market for meat. I mean, to supply the United States of America with meat. I've never met a rancher yet, and I've met a lot of them that didn't love cattle, but yet they raise them in order to slaughter them to provide meat to a nation, right? Because they know it's an important thing and it's a good business for them. It's their livelihood. Hunting is no different. I mean, I've never met a hunter who didn't love the animals that they were hunting, that wouldn't do everything they could to support and ensure that, not a real hunter. I mean, I know some guys that have hunting license and carry guns around, that don't do any of us any good with the way they represent us. But when it comes to a true traditional hunter, I've never met one yet that didn't care about the animal he was hunting and didn't want to do all they could to ensure that, not only they had future opportunities, but the people that came behind them had future opportunities as well. And there's only one way to address that message, right? And that's to just keep moving forward, keep doing our best to conserve and manage and ensure that there's a harvestable surplus of resources for all of us to enjoy, and kind of in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily react to the naysayers quite as. I think you and I talked quite a bit yesterday about the responsibility we have as hunters to ensure that we put a positive light out there, particularly with everything being so visible today, through Facebook and Instagram and everything else. You get one person that does something that's seen in a bad light, it reflects poorly on all of us. And I think the best thing we can do as hunters and conservationists is just kind of step up our A game on how we represent ourselves and represent hunting in the public arena.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that exact same way as you well know. But there's a couple issues, just playing devil's advocate here. There's a couple things in Alaska that really, I think, turn off a lot of people to hunting, or some people hunt and won't particularly target a few species. For example, Kodiak brown bear and wolf hunting. Those two issues are pretty big with the people who are on the fence about hunting
Mm-hmm.
and might not necessarily want to get into hunting, but they see people target brown bears, and it's pretty common comment you see all the time on photos of people with bears. Well, did you eat the meat? why would you shoot something if you didn't eat the meat? And the same thing with these wolves. They're very emotionally attached to the wolves, especially being able to view wildlife around areas in Denali National Park. And I can kind of get their perspective if you never see wildlife and then you hear, hey, I'm going to a national park to see wildlife, but you can't see them because there's this message that they're all getting killed outside of the park. So what would you say to those people about why we target those specific animals even though they're not generally being eaten?
Well, a couple of things. One, like particularly to speak to the wolf, right? I mean, if you look at the wolf harvest statistics, there's on the average of 1,200 wolves taken a year. Most of them are being taken by trapping, right? But even though you can get a permit to fly to hunt them with planes, you can trap them, you can shoot 10 wolves a day. And you know why you can shoot 10 wolves a day?
Why is that?
Because if you get a chance to take out more than one wolf in order to support that population, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game wants you to have it because, getting that opportunity is pretty doggone rare. And you get an animal that is that smart, that has an average of 6 to 8 puppies in a litter, and I think they have them every year. I'm not as familiar with that resource as far as their birth statistics, but you can very quickly have that animal overpopulate. And they're vicious killers. I mean, I shot a wolf a number of years ago. I watched 2 wolves take down a caribou, right? And while they were on that caribou, we managed to make a stalk, and I successfully shot one of them. We found over 20 caribou carcasses within about a 5-acre radius where I took that wolf at. And as we were making the stalk, we were literally watching them as the caribou were coming down off a hill and filtering through a creek bed. And you know how it is in that upper tundra country, you get trees and stuff around the creeks, and then it kind of opens up, the tundra once you get very far away from the river bottom, right?
Right.
And when the caribou came out of that creek bottom, they were literally about up to their knees in water until they got to the tundra. And these 2 wolves were kind of sitting behind a little clump of trees, and when them caribou would get about knee deep in water, they'd hit them, And then once they had a caribou down, when the new groups were coming behind them, they would literally leave the carcass and go sit behind those trees and watch left and right, watch them caribou pass by them until they were gone, and then they would go back to the carcass and eat. And the reason they were doing that is very simple, right? They didn't want to interrupt the herd and the migration while they were eating. They wanted that herd to keep migrating uninterrupted, so when they were ready to kill another one, they would be set up for another ambush.
Oh yeah, they're highly intelligent creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, they learn so quick. I think a lot of people that don't understand the means in which they are targeted, mostly through trapping and predator calling. They see the act as cruel, right? And why would people do it that way? And I think a lot of people don't understand how smart wolves are and how hard they are to actually hunt and target, and why it's so vital that we do target them.
Yeah, I actually wrote an article that was published, I don't know, 7 or 8 different places about it. And I titled the article "The Ghost of the Tundra," and really what the article was all about was, how seldom you see and how seldom you have the opportunity to take a wolf, even in country like where we moose hunt at. I mean, there was a huge population of wolves, right? You every sandbar, every gravel bed has wolf tracks on it. You can hear wolves howling day and night, right? And I've even had like 3 different times in our camp when we had a little bit of snow. We'd wake up in the morning, the wolf had literally walked into the edge of our camp and sat there and watched our camp, and then turned around and left. Didn't hurt anything, but they were curious and they came and checked us out. And when you sit in that country, we're sitting on top of ridges glassing for moose. That country's wide open. And if you saw 3 or 4 wolves in a 15-day hunt, you were lucky.
Yeah, they're very, very smart creatures and cover a lot of ground, and they can hunt very tactfully as a pack, Very smart, very efficient.
And you know where we hunt at north of the Arctic Circle, if you're only seeing 3 or 4 in a country like that, you can imagine the damage they can do in places like Idaho and Colorado where you don't have that same open floor plan that we have here.
Exactly, and that's why even though a lot of people see trapping as so cruel in the methods in which it kills these animals, but the reason it's used so much is because they're so hard to hunt. It's so hard to find and so rare to see one out in the field just hunting other species. That trapping them's most effective because you're taking out of that. You're taking the human variable out of it and attracting that animal to somewhere where they're more than likely feeding on something like moose carcasses and other things in the area.
Yeah, and if you switch over to brown bears, right, same problem, different methods, right? I mean, if you look at Kodiak Island is a good example. It's one I always use where there's a lot of conflict on Kodiak around who gets how many tags. But the biggest deterrent to a brown bear population is a big boar brown bear, right? I mean, they're killing the cub. I mean, it's literally the only enemy they have is themselves. And you get a lot of big boars in an area, and then all of a sudden, your cub population goes way down, and it significantly impacts the resource. And if you look at the harvest statistics on Kodiak, if you look at what's taking, I hate to get into this subject because it's so controversial, but I mean, if you just look straight at the harvest statistics, if you change the issue of those tags, right? You take a world class, hunting area and possibly turn it around, because if you look straight at the harvest statistics, there's a lot more sows taken by residents than they are by guided hunters. And you start leaving 2, 3, 4, 5 big boars in that country in a year, and it won't take long before you can see the negative impacts of not keeping that resource and not allowing the professionals to manage that resource based on composition studies and based on biological data and based on harvest statistics versus based on legislation and based on law.
So what you're saying is based on research done by Alaska Department of Fish and Game specifically on Kodiak is that guided hunters that come up here and pay tens of thousands of dollars to hunt on Kodiak, they typically shoot bigger boars most of the time, and by shooting those bigger boars, it's actually better for the population of Kodiak brown bears?
Absolutely. I mean, their hands. I mean, even people that don't hunt know that. If a brown bear who can't find a sow to breed, will kill the cubs of a sow because she will immediately come into heat, and that brown bear will have a sow to breed.
So, just to play devil's advocate here, because I know a lot of our listeners that are non hunters are probably thinking this exact thing, that, if management of these resources and predators, it takes these drastic acts to manage them, predator management units where we're targeting them through trapping and hunting and such extensive hunting on Kodiak targeting big bears. How did they survive for thousands of years before humans were in these areas and before we started having game management in these areas?
Well, I'm not as familiar with the numbers on brown bears as I am with the numbers on anything else, but I can just give you some names, right?
Sure.
Roosevelt elk, North American whitetail, North American wild turkey. I mean, all of those animals were literally devastated. And it was hunting and wildlife conservation that brought the numbers back to what they are today. And it's the same thing with so many resources. I mean, you don't really have to argue a point. The points are well documented. If you just look at the resource numbers over time, you'll see that what changed the resources and changed the wildlife opportunities for all Americans was the Conservation Act that started I don't know the exact date they started, but Teddy Roosevelt's the biggest name in the conservation movement. But if you just look at the numbers, right, the numbers speak for themselves. You can't argue with them. Good biological data, good composition studies, and people who genuinely care about the resource. And those people, whether people like it or not, are more often than not the actual people who hunt the resources. It's what, got this country back to having the amazing resources and amazing opportunities that we have today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, just me personally, a lot of people, you know, until you, for hunting, for example, a lot of people are wondering, how can a person kill something and respect it so much at the same time? And for me personally, when I think about that, think about the time I've spent in countries just harvesting mountain goats, and the people I've harvested them with, and watching those animals on those hillsides, and the amount of effort and time it took that I've invested in harvesting that animal and taking the particular animal I was after, and how important it was to me to take that particular animal, and then the amount of effort it took to bring that animal out of the field and care for the meat, and the whole processing part of it after the meat was done, and then feeding my family, and sharing that meat with people over time. Every time I see a mountain goat now, it's like, it just gives you a whole different perspective on how the animal lives and breathes and where it's at, how old it is. Hunting an animal, people just I think a lot of non-hunters might have this idea that we just go out, see it, hunt it, and shoot it. But there's so much more to studying the animal and what you can learn from watching those animals, and where that respect come from.
Yeah, some people would just never be able to explain that to. I mean, it's for me, it's just the way it is. I love the animals I hunt. I eat the animals I hunt. I love sharing. The harvest, and in a lot of ways, I love helping out a resource that needs my help, and I love helping people that need my help. And hunting gives me an outlet and a venue to do both of those things. You know,
Absolutely. I mean, I've just over the last few years, I talked about it on the Mediocre Alaskan podcast I was on the other day. I got to talk to Jeff Lund, and we talked a little bit about that. Since 4 or 5 years ago, starting up the Great Alaska Hunting Club group on Facebook, I really just started it out of the blue at lunchtime at work one day, because the guys I was riding around with weren't hunters, on at work, and I like to talk about hunting. I mean, anybody that knows me, I mean, we could see each other at a banquet, and next thing you know, we're talking about, chasing mountain goats, or, going through bogs chasing moose or something. Hunters, you get a bunch of hunters in a group, and they'll be telling fibs and telling stories for hours and hours and hours on end.
yeah,
But just starting that group really, I started being able to teach people things from lessons I've learned in ways I never thought I would have. And now draw tags just came out, and I got half dozen people, half dozen opportunities to teach and pass on knowledge to people, and help them fill their freezers, and help them take their families out. Being able to share that knowledge and helping the community out. I mean, it's such an amazing feeling.
yeah, and it's a lot of, and I know that's a lot of fun too, right?
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
a blast.
even if you don't go on the hunt, you're sharing the success because you help the person get the information they need to be successful, and that in itself is rewarding. And I feel bad for people who don't understand that, because they're missing out. They're missing out some amazing opportunities just to help other people. And I've always found that helping other people helps me, because in reality, it feels pretty doggone good to see somebody be successful and know you were part of it.
Oh, 100%, man. I got a few friends that have been trying really hard to take a couple different animals the last couple years, and I think they're kind of on a journey, right? It's not just about going to shoot something. They change Alaska hunting has changed a lot of different things for them in their lives, their fitness, their mental toughness, the way they plan out and think about things. Just watching that person grow, why they're on this journey of trying to accomplish this thing that's really important to them, and they've worked their heart out trying to make it happen, and they're going to make it happen. This particular person I'm talking about, I can tell just by the amount of growth they've experienced. It's really cool to watch. It's really awesome. I enjoy it.
In a lot of ways, I'm jealous of you guys. I mean, if you look just today, right? I mean, if you look at the access to knowledge, the access to information, the ability to reach out to people in different communities, and get good quality input and do good research. There's so many different things you can learn from Google today that, when I was first started out, you had to figure that stuff out, and it was a lot harder to get good quality information. And, for young folks today that are interested, it's almost overwhelming for the amount of information that you can get. Whereas before it was a lack of information, now it's an overload of information. So you got to kind of pick through it and find the right stuff. But, being able to get good quality information, being able to reach out to people who are willing to help you is so much easier today than it was in the past. And I just can't imagine, what it would be like to have the passion for hunting, that I do, and be 25, 26, 27, 28 years old with the access that we have today, man. It'd be like, Christmas every morning.
That's definitely how I feel some days. I overwhelmingly blessed. It's Alaska is such an amazing place. But on that topic about the access to new information and new hunters, not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyways. Uh, if you were talking to a new hunter or had to give them one piece of advice about getting started hunting in Alaska, what would you tell them? If they're just starting out a career in hunting in Alaska, maybe have no hunting experience at all, where would you start them out at?
If I would basically encourage them to join some of these hunting groups that are, like your web page and your Facebook page. There's a lot of different groups out there. 907 hunting, hunting Alaska. Uh, you know, the Great Alaska Hunting Club, which that one really well, right?
Yeah.
But that's a good start. And then there's like with our SCI banquet and gathering, Wild Sheep Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. There's a number of these banquets and a number of these organizations that have a lot of people in them that are willing to help you. And you know yourself, because you and I see each other at a lot of these different events. You start showing up at these events, you meet people that have a lot of experience, right? And if you generally show a genuine interest and a respect for the information that you're given, and ask a lot of questions, people are gonna help you. And I think my advice would be do some research, get involved, meet people who can help you, learn from what other people have already learned.
Yeah, that's huge. I can't express how much it's helped me over the last few years, feeding off the knowledge from other people and the amount of research I started doing. Just doing the research and spending more time preseason studying and learning new areas and learning about the animals we're hunting. I've seen in my personal hunts, I've seen my success go up quite a bit, and I think that's one of the biggest contributing factors that is often overlooked. I see a lot of people asking questions on social media groups, which is very, very smart. You can tell that they're looking for knowledge, and it's also important to find the right source for that knowledge. Going back to the Fish and Game website and learning from their libraries and talking to biologists and taxidermists and butchers. So you really um, making sure that the knowledge you're getting is from a trusted source and from experienced people.
I just give you one good example. There's a guy, his name's Patrick Hagen, right? Him and his wife just moved up here, in the last year. They didn't really know a lot of people, right? But they came to our summer barbecue this year. And, they met a number of us, myself, Dan Williams, Chad Rydell, and there's a few more, Chuck Kitawa, I can't ever pronounce his name right. He's Hawaiian, but all these guys are really big hunters. And then Patrick and his wife were just really, really good people. They're experienced hunters, but they just now became Alaskans, right? Mm-hmm. And from that, grew a friendship and a network that, Patrick and his wife are getting all kinds of input from us. He actually drew DS-165, one of the Cusack Mountain Dollar Sheep tags. He's pretty excited about that. But they basically just showed up at our barbecue, and all of a sudden they walked away, and now they've got this amazing network of friends that are, that are excited about helping them. One event changed everything for them.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it speaks volumes about the Alaskan community and the hunting community in Alaska for sure.
And the other thing too is that you don't even have to ask the questions if you join some of these groups. You can just read. So if you don't know what questions to ask, or you're the type of person who isn't a flaming extrovert like some of us, you can just read and learn a lot. And in a lot of ways, you can just figure it out from what you learn from the questions that other people ask.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you joining us. I'm glad we could have this conversation. I think a lot of people, it'll answer a lot of questions for them that might be on the fence about hunting, or questions being able to see things from different viewpoints. I know we talked about earlier that some people are going to be set in their ways, and that's the way it is about it, but I think having these conversations and talking about it and sharing this information with people is really what's going to help us take better care of Alaskan wildlife and help grow the hunting community. So I really appreciate your time today.
You bet. I appreciate you inviting me to be on the show, and I kind of got to get back to putting together one heck of a banquet. And if you're really looking to join a whole bunch of like-minded individuals, there's still a few tickets left on Saturday. And if you're a new person, you want to meet new people, between the two nights, we're going to have 1,200 like-minded individuals gathered together to talk about hunting and hopefully win some good stuff, and overall just flat out have a good time.
Well, definitely, people should go if they have the opportunity to. It's going to be absolutely awesome. If people want to listen to more of your content, do you have some social media that they can follow there as well, YouTube or anything like that?
Well, you can look us up at SCI Alaska Chapter on Facebook. You can look us up on the web at aksafariclub.org. You can look me up, Louis Cusack, on Facebook. My wife and I put a lot of content out there, and then we have a page that we periodically put a lot of information on there. It comes and goes with hunting and fishing seasons. But there's a page called The Adventures of Louis and Ruth Cusack, and we put a lot of stuff there too. And we do a lot of stuff around, recipes and hunting and fishing tips. And, our kind of claim to fame, or thing we like to do anyway, is thriving in the outdoors, is what I call it. Remote wilderness trips that are really nice and really comfortable without, 5 plane loads, and, without eating Mountain House freeze dried for 15 days and cutting toothpicks in half to save weight.
Now you're speaking my language. Well, thanks, Louis. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you some more here in the future.
All right, man. Take care. Good luck to you.
All right, guys. Well, that's another episode of the Alaska podcast. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Louis and the SCI Alaska does some great work for the conservation efforts here in Alaska, so if you're on the fence about hunting, or if you want to learn more about hunting or get to know some great people, like we stated earlier, jump on the Great Alaska Hunting Club group or look into SCI Alaska. You can check out their website for some more information on the conservation work they do here in Alaska. So thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you next time on the podcast.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down.